Good evening, everyone. We're calling the meeting to order. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the Statement of Values. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interests of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. City Clerk, roll call.
Ms. Councilmember Caserta. Davis.
Here.
Kolstad. Mahan. O'Neill.
Here.
Watanabe. And Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
May I also please read the AB 23 announcement that members of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, Sports and Open Space Authority, and Housing Authority are entitled to receive $30 for each attended meeting. And finally, let me read the Statement of Behavioral Standards. The City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note that, as the presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed. Welcome, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you, City Clerk. Before we get started, I know that you are seeing some new faces up here in front of us, and I want to introduce our new city manager, Deanna Santana. Deanna, yes? I just wanted to say a couple things about Deanna, and I know that she has a resume a mile long, and you can look that up, but just a few things welcoming her to Santa Clara, and then I think she's going to introduce some of her new assistant chief operating officers in the city manager's office. But the city council, you selected Deanna, I think a little over a month ago, and she started her career in public service about 23 years ago. And before coming to Santa Clara, Deanna worked for the cities of Sunnyvale, San Jose, and Oakland. So Santa Clara should be a piece of cake for her with all that experience. She began her work as a management intern and has held various positions over the course of her career, leading to the city manager appointments that she's had. She holds 2 Bachelor of Arts degrees from UC Berkeley and a Master of City Planning from MIT. She's also active in the executive education program at Harvard Business School, where her area of emphasis is on governance and board roles and responsibilities. She is not new to this area. She's a 3rd-generation Silicon Valley native that was born and raised in Mountain View and is a graduate of Los Altos High School. She comes from a very entrepreneurial family that owned 2 small businesses, asphalt and concrete, since post-World War II. Her family has deep roots in the region, including her 95-year-old aunt who lives in the city of Santa Clara. So everyone's related to someone that lives in Santa Clara. I've learned that. She's married to a public school teacher and is the proud mother of 2 school-age children. So I really want to have everyone give Deanna a really warm welcome to Santa Clara. She's going to have her work cut out for her. We're not the easiest group here. We have a lot of challenges, but there's so many opportunities here, and we're very fortunate that you have selected our city to be our next city manager. So welcome, Deanna. If you'd like to introduce your new.
I would, and I would first just like to thank the City Council for your support, and particularly your patience over the last week as I've been getting up to speed and ramping up in order to achieve and accomplish a high learning curve. I also want to thank the members of the community for the warm welcome and all the opportunities to meet people along the way over the past week. For introductions, I want to start with Walter Rossman. He has been appointed the Chief Operating Officer As we've said before, there's 3 public municipal functions that serve the city of Santa Clara, and Walter will be in my right hand with respect to providing service and leading in those areas. Walter also has expertise and focus on labor relations, human resources, technology, finance, and has held executive positions with the City of San Diego, City of San Jose, Palo Alto, as well as Sunnyvale. So thank you, Walter, for agreeing to come with me along the way. Other person I want to make mention is Manuel Pineda. He's also been appointed as the Assistant City Manager. He was the Director of Public Works with the City of Sunnyvale and held a Deputy Director position with the City of San Jose for Transportation, where he led some of the region's largest transportation projects and has been an incredible fundraiser with respect to transportation grants development as well as innovations around transportation. And he is a civil engineer, certified and credentialed through San Jose State University. So thank you, Manuel, as well.
Thank you and welcome, Walter and Manuel. Be wonderful additions to our city manager's office. Okay, now down to business. All right, we have approval of minutes for September 12th, 2017. Is there a motion? Here a motion, is there a second? Second. Motion second, lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Next, we have continuances and exceptions, and I have one request that we move up since we have here members of our Library Foundation, Library Commission, and others. I'm going to ask that we move up items 19A and 20A to right after the consent calendar. So it would be right before public presentations, if that's okay, and then we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the motion? Lights on the motion? And thank you, that passes unanimously. All right, first, special order of business, we have recognition of community and corporate partners of the Santa Clara Library Foundation and Friends. And we have Hillary Keith, our city librarian. Please come forward. You look a little different than Saturday. From Comic-Con, yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor.
Is it on? We're still trying to figure this one out. There we go.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. It is my great pleasure to recognize the Santa Clara City Library's Foundation and Friends, corporate and community sponsors. Their generous contributions provide not only the icing on the cake with programs such as Comic-Con and summer reading program, but really, more importantly, they allow the library to be nimble and respond to the ever-changing interests and needs of our community, and that's so important. And it is also my great pleasure to introduce the Foundation's president, Carly Sherman.
Welcome, Carly.
Thank you, Hillary. My name is Carly Sherman. I'm the president of the board of the Library Foundation and Friends. And it's my great honor to recognize our corporate sponsors. But first, I want to say thank you to the City Council and Madam Mayor for your support. The Mission Library renovation project is coming up. We're really excited to see those construction signs go up, as well as to start our fundraising efforts to ensure that programs and the icing on the cake continues for the Mission branch as well.
We still have to vote on that, so, okay.
She's advocating.
And I'm also very fortunate to be part of the Library Foundation and Friends. When I talk to people and I talk to them about my service with the library, 9 out of 10 people say, I love the library. And whether it's from memories when they were a child or going to Comic-Con and attending our events, people love the library. Because of the passion and generosity, partnered with our amazing library staff, we bring so much more to the community than just reading. Everyone in our community benefits, from the north side to the old quad and beyond. Tonight, before the City Council and our committee and our community, I'm honored to recognize the groups and corporations that partner with the Santa Clara City Library Foundation and Friends to give back to the community, generously donating to our libraries. We have a number of people here in attendance tonight, including, and starting off with Kaiser Permanente, Chris Boyd, the Senior Vice President, Area Manager of Kaiser Permanente, Santa Clara. This is for your support of the Kaiser Permanente Health and Wellness Collection and Programs.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Hey, Carly.
Thank you. Next, we have from the Rotary Club of Santa Clara, Joe Sweeney, President. Thank you so much. Did I go out of order? This is for your support of literacy and lifelong learning.
Great, thank you.
All right.
And next we have from Key Point Credit Union, Duran Neumann, Director of Sales and Development.
Duran.
This is for your ongoing support of our summer reading program. Thank you so much. And from the Mission City Community Fund, Debbie Davis, President. This is for your support for literacy outreach as well as summer reading.
Oh, there's more members of that organization.
Thank you so much. And from our San Francisco 49ers and 49er Foundation, we have Al Guido, President, and Justin Prettyman. For your support of literacy and lifelong learning. More stuff. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Photo?
Thank you. Thank you.
And from AMD, we have Leslie Piratana. She is your best friend at AMD. AMD supports our STEM learning as well as our summer reading and Comic-Con, as we all know is ever popular. So much. And from our Yahoo Employees Foundation, Raj Bose, Director of Engineering. Also in support of our STEM Central and STEM Learning. Okay, I don't know how to do shaking and everything at the same time.
Sharp edges.
They're big flex. Thank you so much. And from Intel, we have Rita Holliday, our Community Engagement Manager.
Rita!
Also for our support of literacy outreach. I'm getting it. Thank you so much. And from related companies, we have Steve Eimer, Executive VP.
Steve.
There you are. Thank you so much. From Summerhill Homes, we have Joe Head, Managing Director in support of literacy and lifelong learning.
Jojo.
Thank you so much. And from the Irvine Company, we have Carlene Matchnick,
Irvine.
Vice President, Entitlements and Public Affairs, also in support of literacy and lifelong learning.
Marlene.
Thank you so much. Thank you. More pictures later. And also we have Union Pacific Francisco Castillo, Director of Public Affairs, who was not able to attend tonight, but we want to recognize. And also unable to attend tonight was Enterprise Holdings, also one of our great corporate partners. Thank you all to all of our donors and to the city for allowing us to recognize them.
And thank you to everyone. They're making our library a wonderful place, and you have the most beautiful awards, so thank you. Tracy, did you want to say something? Do you want to do a? That's up to you. What would you like? This is your show right now. Okay, photo op. Everyone up.
Here. Can we stand back here? Yeah, here.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
easier
up here, probably because there's so many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, here.
Joe, nice to meet you. Carl.
Are you?
Al, nice to see you.
Hold down. Hey, Pat, we're gonna stand back.
We're gonna stay up here.
Because there's so many of you. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
So we can get you. Yeah. Yeah. All the tall people in the back, and this way we're taller. We'll stand in the back. And you can be behind us.
I mean, the city will take, get the city's.
Good job, buddy. I love your
Hey,
picture
Joe, how
all
are
over
you?
the hospital.
Good. Hey, why are there? Some people in the car. Somebody has no. Sit on my desk. I don't need to see you. Okay, short people in the front. No. That's why we're up here.
One, two, three, and then we do a couple more just for good measure. Back here. Sorry. I'm good.
Good job, everybody. Keep up the good work. Good to see you, Carlene.
Thanks for your donation.
Ready with your chair. Yeah, I saw that. It's okay. You wanted me to sit right on my phone. Probably in this. Kind of fun. I can't believe it. Take care. Yeah.
Wait a second till it clears out a little bit.
But they did not leave, right? I mean, the library folks are staying for the mission.
All right, so next we have a presentation by Silicon Valley Leadership Group announcing the Silicon Valley Turkey Trot to be held on Thanksgiving Day, November 23rd, 2017. And back up again, we have Joe Head, the award winner, here to speak on this. And
I'll introduce myself if I
yes,
may.
please, thank you.
Good
Siobhan,
evening.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm Siobhan Kenny with Applied Materials. So I work here in Santa Clara, and I'm delighted to be joined with Joe Head from Summerhill Homes. And we are here to represent the Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. As you can guess, it's held on Thanksgiving morning in downtown San Jose. This will be our 13th year. It's a marvelous 5K walker run and 10K run to raise funds for 5 local charities. And during the last 12 years, we've raised nearly $7 million. It's a great way to start the holiday. It's a great community building event. And we hope you'll join us. We have a special invitation from Joe.
Summerhill sponsors the Mayor's Cup, so I'm going to appeal to your competitive spirits and ask everyone to sign up and be first among all cities and the counties in the area. So we'll be looking to distribute all of our little cards, especially to you and all the city people. And the new city manager, congratulations, and we'll be getting them to you and your staff. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Siobhan and Joe. Thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next we have the consent calendar. All items are approved with one motion unless there are requests to pull any items from the consent calendar. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull 13A5.
13A5. Is there, I have a motion and a second. Is there any member of the audience wanting to pull any items from the consent calendar? Staff? No items pulled? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve all other items besides 13A5 consent calendar. Lights on the motion? And that passes unanimously. All right, next we have the 2 items that were brought forward, and the first one is 19A, bids and proposals. That's to award the Public Works contract for the Mission Branch Library remodel project to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Gonzalez and Strong Construction Company, Inc., in the amount of $3,843,000. Approval of appropriations in the amount of $1,547,300 from Capital Projects Reserve, and an authorization to execute change orders up to 10% of the original contract price, or $384,300, for a total not to exceed amount of $4,227,300. And I see Alan, is anyone coming forward on this? I didn't give him time to put his boot on. Sorry, we moved it up. It was out of order. Apologize.
Actually, my boot did come off, so
Okay, oh,
I'm
it
very
did come
pleased
off,
with
so you
that.
can move quicker,
Yes,
right?
so,
Okay, great.
Per council direction, we've brought back this item for council consideration of award. We have looked at the bids and are recommending Gonzalez and Strong with this project. It does include, as directed by council, all the ad bid items and a 10% contingency amount for the construction. And Gonzalez and Strong already is working on a city project right now, so we've been in contact with them, and they're excited to work on the project. And I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, is there any questions from the council? Okay, seeing none. I know there's a motion on the floor to approve and a second. City Clerk, do you have any cards on this item? If not, is there any member of the public wanting to speak on this item? Good evening.
My name is Lee Broffman. I'm a Library Board of Trustee member and also part of the Library Foundation. Complicated. Anyway, I just want to thank the council for stepping up to the plate for this. We fought so long and hard. Kathy Watanabe, she showed me the way. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, Lee, and your commission and the Library Foundation and everyone who's put their heart and soul in this project. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful project and expansion to our mission library and well-needed improvement. So there's a motion and a second. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Get to work, Alan. Okay, next. We have Board and Commission for Action, Board of Library Trustees, minutes of September 18, 2017, request to note and file.
So moved.
And recommendation to award the Mission Branch Library Remodel Project to the lowest responsive bidder, and that council appropriate the funds to cover the base bid and bid alternates, taking into account the original capital budget for the project that was established 3 years ago. So there's a motion to note and file and
Second.
accept the recommendation. Motion second. Is there any discussion? Any member of the public wanting to speak on that issue? Okay, lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Now we're going to go back on track here to the public presentations, number 14, and I think I have one card or a couple of cards. Jonalyn Trapsey, if you'd like to come forward, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. First off, I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys are doing for City of Santa Clara. I grew up here, and I don't see myself leaving Santa Clara because I love it here so much. But I really just want to speak on the curfew of the stadium, as I noticed that it's not on the agenda. I think that this is an important topic since we just had Coldplay, who surpassed the curfew recently in the past couple weeks. So knowing that this is a continuing problem that we're having, and I think it's really important to revisit this issue. We should enforce the rules and increase the fines because the current fine not to increase $1,000, I think, is ridiculous. We are also kidding ourselves to say that everything ends at 10 p.m. at the stadium because we know that we have to consider the time it takes to have people leave the stadium, have them walk to their car, and also the police officers escorting everybody off the the area and also the surrounding premises. So I think that it's fair to say that it definitely does exceed the 10 p.m. curfew. As a person who lives behind the stadium, I think it's very difficult for us to get back to our area or even to run an errand, say that, we forgot to buy something in the grocery to make dinner. It's very difficult for us to leave our home or even to order takeout because of all the chaos that happens around the stadium during that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I think that are going to be discussing this at our Stadium Authority meeting next Tuesday.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wanting to speak on any issue for public presentations? Please come forward. I don't have any other cards, so if you'd like to speak, you can queue up. Welcome.
Hi there, good evening. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
There we go. Well, the first thing is one of my regulars. Now that we have a new assistant manager who has experience with road things, maybe we'll finally get my stoplight at Prune Ridge and Cronin. Maybe I can talk to you about finally getting it. It shouldn't take a year to get one single stoplight installed. So let's see if we can get it moving before somebody else get killed at that intersection, please. It's already been approved and budgeted and everything else. I'd like to see that. Another thing is, I'd still like to see the citizens' questions that get put before this council actually recorded and answered. I don't think it's unreasonable that questions get answers. This is our council, and we should be able to get those answers. Lastly, I really want to express some absolute elation that this agenda has got something on it that I've been asking for years. And Deanna, I think this is because you're here, and I have to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and God bless you. We got a revised agenda, and it actually says why it was revised. God bless you. I never figured out why it was so difficult to have it say revised and what was revised. If you did this, thank you. It has been taking an act of miracles and the blessing of the Pope to get added item 17B added onto this, and I cannot thank you enough. It is wonderful to finally have something so simple put onto an agenda. So thank you, thank you. I also saw that you put a city manager's report on that I saw today for the first time. That is a welcome addition too, so thank you for that enhancement too. You're already shedding so much light onto what I hope is more continued improvement in what our city does and the responsiveness that you bring to our city for us, the citizens. I can't thank you enough, and I look forward to working with you and having more things go even smoother and better. And if I can help in any way, please, it's an open invitation. So this was miraculous and such a welcome sight. I was doing the happy dance all over my bedroom. My dog thought I was going nuts. So thank you so much for this. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for those comments, Deborah. Anyone else? All right, moving on to consent items pulled for discussion. Oh, what was that? Oh, consent items pulled for discussion, and we had item 13A5 pulled by Councilmember O'Neill. And can I just read it first? 13A5 is adoption of a resolution approving an application for the County of Santa Clara All-Inclusive Playground Grant for an amount up to $500,000 for the Central Park Arbor Playground, and authorization for the city manager and/or designee to execute all documents necessary for the grant application and administration. Teresa, you have a question?
I just wanted Director Teixeira to kind of go over the project, because I think there has been some confusion out in the community on some of the social media, and we have received some correspondence, and I think that this is a really great opportunity for us, and so I wanted him to talk about the project and where it's going to be, so those questions that are out there in the community can maybe be answered.
Thank you for pulling this. I'm glad you're doing this. Director Teixeira, if you'd like to come forward. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, City Manager, and community. I'm pleased to present a request for approval for a resolution of support for county inclusionary grant for $500,000 for the Central Park Arbor Playground project. Okay. The Central Park Arbor Playground is a non-compliant with Americans with Disabilities Act and the Consumer Product Safety Commission guidelines. It's also been an unfunded priority for over 10 years. As everyone recalls, that Council in 2013 established a goal to enhance community sports and recreational assets, and then you've been chipping away at that since then. In fiscal year 2016-17, Council did approve a CIP project, 3183, and appropriated $500,000 from the Kylie development across the street, $500,000 of developer contributions towards the Arbor Playground. And the county this year, we've been not moving slowly on this project, but one of the things is making sure that we have good and adequate funding from a variety of sources, particularly for things that are going in or have been in Central Park. Central Park, as you know, is a community asset. It's a community park, so it needs to serve everyone. The all-inclusive playground grant will help do that. The purpose is new, meaningful, inclusive playgrounds for persons of all ages, all abilities. The grant requires community input, which we more than happily do. We have outreach programs going on for several of the playground renovation projects that we're working on, so there'll be additional input on this playground. It is a matching grant, so that it takes the developer contributions and takes county funding and amplifies that. It's also, the playground grant looks to be developmentally appropriate. And I think in today's day and age with all the research and everything that's going on in the Valley, it's very important to make sure that we're engaging our kids in their social units, both physically, socially, emotionally, giving them great sensory and cognitive experiences, supporting development of communication, providing play experiences not just at an advanced level, but at the beginning and the intermediate and the advanced levels, and then also integrating it with nature and habitat. So the county grant will certainly supplement and help this program that we have for Central Park. So the project and the site selection, there is a question as to, well, where is it and where is it going? The two pictures up here show that the existing playground is actually nestled into trees, and it's a very confined space, and it has several large granite tubes that we received many, many years ago. It has a metal slide and it has a couple of bucket swings. Certainly not enough for the community at this point, but we do know that it is a beloved playground. It is in the community park facility. It is a needed and funded project, and by moving it, it will have very little to low impact on the existing park and uses. We do have an amphitheater there, which you can see in the right hand. A lot of people just walk by it every day and don't realize that it's even there. And that would be a wonderful additional space that can be used for this. Again, through the community outreach process and recommendation of the Park and Rec Commission back to City Council. You'll have the opportunity to weigh in on that. But that's what our current proposal is. The opportunities, obviously, for you need larger fall zones these days for the equipment that gets put in, and then making sure that it's age appropriate for both the 2 through 5, the 6 through 12, and then all of the intergenerational things that we would love to be doing as well. So it increases the capacity, it increases play value, it's inclusionary. You've heard me come before you several times to talk about our therapeutic rec program and just the wonderful legacy that is. We can certainly do much better in our playground design so that all children and adults will feel like there's a play space for them. And we also talk about making sure that all the elements of play are there. And at the park dedication, climbing, swinging, breaking, sliding, spinning, balancing, and free play, making sure that kids are using, both gross and fine motor skills and developing those. All of that then integrated with natural elements and the potential use, again, for some of the features that you currently find at the existing Arbor Playground. So that's what the proposal is. It's pretty simple and straightforward. And again, we'll be doing as robust community outreach as we can as we do the Central Park Master Plan and also the other playgrounds. So I'm open to your questions if there are any.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Yeah, thank you very much. So so it's very clear where we're proposing to put it. It's not going to be taking other, other areas. There seemed to be some confusion about where it was going to be placed. So it's either, what we would either use this, the little amphitheater area or try to expand that play. Is the intent to remove the concrete tubes, which I know a lot of us remember from decades past?
Those could be reused based on the community input. So we've received some ideas from folks already that said, well, why don't you use them as large planters? We'll have to see what the community input process says. Some of those could be used as climbing elements, decorative elements, et cetera. I don't see those going away from Central Park, but then again, it's up to the community to make that recommendation, Park and Rec Commission and yourselves to decide on that. In regards to the space itself, I've been here 8.5 years. We've really not used the amphitheater for anything in 8.5 years. We mainly use for like art and wine, the pavilion, the meadow stage. We bring stages in nowadays, so I'm sure we will integrate whatever the playground design is into that hill feature. And then as an inclusionary piece, it's not just a matter of ramps and platforms for persons in wheelchairs. That's not inclusionary design. Persons with disabilities have varying capabilities and a lot of different needs, and the families that are who have persons with disabilities would love to engage with them, and brothers and sisters and friends would love to be able to play with persons with disabilities. So what we will be creating is a playground that supports that along the lines of the vision of the county supervisors as well as many disability rights advocates in our community.
So there's been kind of a growing body of work, and it seems like in recent years, and I know that I think there's a local foundation that was even formed to support this, and I think maybe Sunnyvale has one, and I think Palo Alto has one. So it's like, as you said, it's people with a full range of abilities that, so they can, everybody can use this playground together.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. If you stay there just for a second, I have a few lights on. Councilmember Davis?
Thank you, Jim, because as Councilmember O'Neill stated, there was like fake news going on about what was going on here. And just the fact that you're including everyone into this, and it's a full purpose thing. And you're absolutely right. I've walked past that thing many times and just breezed by. So I wasn't really paying attention. But that's something that, we're going to fix that now, and it will be a viable spot for a lot of people. But I want to thank you in this matching fund thing. So hopefully this will go through quickly and we're moving on. But thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Director Teixeira. This is exciting, to have this grant available, to be able to apply for and, just add to what we already have to update our parks. I wanted to ask you, I noticed that the Central Park Master Plan update meeting is next week. Is this going to be part of that meeting, discussed as part of that meeting?
Yes, that will be one of the elements. Obviously, we have, there's 3 playgrounds within Central Park, the Pavilion, the CRC, as well as the Arbor Playgrounds. All of the elements will be discussed, and this is one of those elements. We'll also look at existing facilities, the park course, which is down the pathway a little bit, and the barbecue areas. So we'll be discussing all of those and making sure that that we're able to accommodate everything that the community is desiring, and those facilities that may be less well utilized, either coming up with a program that suits it or adjusting them, or in the case of like the large tubes, that they get perhaps reused within the master plan as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. When would we know, Director Teixeira, about the grant, if we were successful to get that grant?
Application date is the 18th, so it's next week. Resolution would show support for that, and then hopefully the county works expeditiously and lets us know before the end of December.
So if we were to build the new park area in a different location, would we keep the existing park so that the children could continue to play on it while if it does change locations?
If we were to, there are actually parts of that playground that are fenced off, and kids do play on the fences that fence them off from that part of the playground. It doesn't meet ADA nor Consumer Product Safety Guidelines. People do fall off and do injure themselves on the ground. The sand doesn't meet. So we would have to do a major renovation of that playground anyway. So I don't foresee us keeping all of those elements there. I see it returning to additional trees and perhaps a few additional barbecues, which are actually on that side of the pathway.
Will that be happening now then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Davis, you have another question?
I just wanted a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I don't see any other lights. Is there any member of the public liking to speak? Please come forward.
I'm very disappointed on how this whole thing is being presented. I really feel like this is being presented as a bait and switch to the public. We have a lot of parks in the city of Santa Clara that are in front of this park that need to be brought up to ADA standards, like the Montague Park. Putting this park in front of that park is fulfilling a need for redoing Central Park under the pool project. I firmly object to how this is being done and what's being presented in a very deceptive way to the public. We're not being told the truth here, boys and girls, and I think it's about time we tell the truth. This park does not need it first. Let's do Montague. They have a very non-compliant, non-ADA compliant park. They've been waiting for a long time to have their park done. It's been studied over and over again. There's been promises made. This is all a bait and switch when we've been told the entire park that was going to be done for the pool project was going to be done at no cost to the taxpayers. Now we're going to have the county pay for it? I think this is terrible how this is being done. Shame on you. Shame on the director for even trying to pull this wool over somebody's eyes. For people who can't see through this, do you think the public can't see through this? Shame on you all for trying to pull the wool over the public's eyes. They're smarter than you think they are. Why do you think there's the buzz that's on next door? Because I see exactly what you're doing. Let's take this money or this grant and let's go for the next park in line, which is not Central Park. Let's appropriate this properly, not towards a favorite project again. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Director Teixeira, I had a couple of questions based upon that testimony. Aren't we in the process of redesign of Montague? Aren't we?
Correct.
Haven't we
Yes.
dedicated quite a bit of money to redesign that park?
Correct. If the public wants to go to the park projects page,
Right.
city website, we do have a listing of all the public input processes that are taking place over the next 2 months. Montague is one of those. Homeridge is one of those. Bowers, Machado, Fuller, Agnew. All of those are in that list.
So
And
that's on
those
the
have
next.
already been yes, and those
Correct.
have already been announced.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to clarify that Montague is in the queue and it's already being talked about, designed, and we're out for community input on that. The grant on this particular park, part of it is because we're leveraging the matching grant from the development across the street.
Correct.
And the funds, sorry, the funds from that. So can you explain that, how the matching funds are, we're looking at obtaining matching funds from the, I think it was a Prometheus development across the street?
Correct. So one of the things in the development agreement for the new housing project across the street was dedication of an approximately 2-acre park site, playground over there, as well as receipt of, as I mentioned, you allocated $500,000 from that project to the Arbor playground. The Arbor playground in the city CIP list, I looked at it earlier today. 10 years ago, that's before I got here, it was listed as in either your first, second, or third priority of a playground that needed to be redone. Central Park is your only community park at this point. The rest are neighborhood parks. So it certainly is an appropriate use of those funds. And in terms of how matching funds work is once you make an allocation, then you look for other funding sources. We did that on the San Tomas and Monroe project, which we received $425,000 of reimbursement funds from Santa Clara County Open Space Authority. We also applied recently for a CPRS and Plate Court grant for 2 other park sites, one of those Machado and Bowers. So hopefully we get those grants, and each one of those would be an additional $90-some thousand for each of those playgrounds, which again goes right back into the community and allows us to do much more in those parks as needed. I don't know what else to say other than our Kitchell report is coming out and later this year, and it will pretty much show that there are a lot of needs in most of our parks. You've heard me say many times, 17 out of 34 playgrounds in Santa Clara do not meet ADA and Consumer Product Safety Commission guidelines. So I
And
think
certainly this was one of them.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe? Do you have comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to just add, the city manager actually, on the new webpage that she created and putting information out to the public, actually included the information about some of the upcoming community meetings, project community meetings regarding the parks, and Montague is one of them. And the rehabilitation project meeting is actually scheduled for October 21st from 10 to 12 p.m. out at the Montague Park building. So, and then there are 2 additional parks in the area, Fuller and Agnew, which are also slated to have community meetings in November. So that meeting, that information has been shared with folks in the north side so that they can be available, and I'm planning on being there too. So I'm really grateful that you put that information out there as well. So, and thank you, Directors Teixeira, also for the information.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill?
Thank you. I just wanted to make another clarifying point. I think when I read through the report that the county was looking for projects like this to be done at what was designated as a community park, not what I was interpreting a community park as opposed to a neighborhood park. So was I right on? So that meant that we had to pick a park, like the Central Park, I believe, is the only one that we have that is designated as a community park. So that's the only park that we have, since it is used by people throughout the city that would qualify. I believe that if I read the report correctly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So I would just recommend you continue looking for those grants so that we can bring all of the parks up to standards that our community deserves. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any other public discussion on this item? Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Unfinished business. I don't see any unfinished business. Items set for hearing. The first item we have is 725 Los Padres Boulevard, adoption of a resolution denying the appeal and upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the minor modification to allow a reduction of the minimum side setback requirement for an existing accessory building from 3 feet to 2.5 feet. So the public hearing is open, and our Community Development Director, Andrew Crabtree, is here. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. As mentioned, the project in front of you is appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to uphold the zoning administrator's denial of a request for a minor modification to allow an accessory structure in the rear yard setback area. And I have a presentation here. The project is located at 725 Los Padres Boulevard. All right. All right, thank you. So the project is located at 725 Los Padres Boulevard, just north of Sarah Avenue. It's a single-family residence. This is a picture of an accessory structure that was built in the rear yard of that single-family residence, and it's the subject of the appeal tonight. This issue began as a code enforcement case for the city, where there was a complaint from a neighbor about the construction of this structure. The city went out to review the case, determined that the structure, this is how it appears today, had been built without benefit of permits, and a violation was issued in July of last year to the owner. A portion of the structure was built within a public utility easement to the rear, and then it encroaches as well about 6 or 7 inches into the side yard setback as it's set in the zoning code for accessory structures. This is a picture of the structure at about the time the city began to enforce the code. It was not yet finished at that time. The city did issue a stop work order to the owner. The city agreed that the owner could go ahead and put a door on the structure and do other things to weatherproof it, but the owner went ahead and completed the construction, as you just saw in the last picture, including the installation of plumbing fixtures and so forth to be a fully usable structure. Just by further background, as you can see, it was completed in February. Here's another picture of how it looks. And then in April, the homeowner filed a request for a minor modification to allow the structure to go into the setback that would normally be required. So in their proposal, they would demolish a portion of the accessory structure that's in the public utility easement to the rear. However, they were requesting variance from the city setback standards for the side yard setback so that they could retain the structure as built 6 or 7 inches into that side yard setback. They would also, in this case, add a 28 square foot addition to sort of make up for the portion that's demolished. And that's their proposal for how to go about legalizing the structure. The minor modification request is essentially a variance process. The city's municipal code sets forth very particular criteria that the city staff is to use in evaluating these requests. The philosophy behind the variance is that you have a set of rules that everyone is meant to abide by on a level playing field, and that there may be unique circumstances where exceptions are warranted, but the bar should be set so that there truly is a unique circumstance before the city would grant that kind of exception or variance. So the first of the required findings is that there are unusual conditions applying to the land or building which do not apply generally in the same district. Staff in our evaluation determined that we could not make this finding. The site is a very standard single-family residential lot, and while it may seem like a relatively small issue, the rules have been set, and if you don't abide by them in one case, then the question really is does anyone need to follow them or not? This is a standard that's in place to protect neighbors, to grant them a degree of privacy in their rear yard and so forth. So for that reason, staff was unable to make the finding, did not issue the minor modification request. And you can see there are other standards as well. There's one about the property right, the enjoyment of the property for the owner, and a couple others about the general health, safety, and welfare. These, I think, are generally more subjective, but also important considerations the city takes into consideration when deciding whether or not to grant the request. The homeowner appealed the city staff's denial of their minor modification to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission held a hearing on July 26th, at which time they denied the appeal. They upheld the zoning administrator's denial of the minor modification and basically cited the same rationale that they determined that they were unable to make the necessary findings to grant the exception. And then the homeowner has appealed the Planning Commission's determination to the City Council as allowed under our code, and are here tonight for that reason. Staff is available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I have some lights of questions. Councilmember Mahan?
Thank you. The 7 inches that it goes into the side yard setback area, does the wall and floor go into that 6 or 7 inches, or is it the eaves?
It's the wall area. So it's not an easy fix of, cut off the eave or something like that. It would actually require changing the wall.
And I'm looking at the aerial, I don't know if you want to pull it up there, but I'm looking at the house on the corner of Armanini, behind the subject house on Sarah and Armanini. Does that house have a garage? I see cars parked in the garage, or in the driveway coming off Sarah, and I can't tell if it has a garage, and then there appears to be a structure, sort of kitty corner to the structure in question.
Okay. Well, based on the aerial photo, it does not appear to have a garage. It does have some accessory structures in the rear yard.
Okay, and that looks pretty much situated the same way this subject looks situated, pretty close to the fence line and right on the property line on the side. Have we looked at that structure?
We have not been out there to measure that structure. We've not received a complaint about that property and have not gone out and reviewed it.
So this is complaint-driven, not really driven by codes per se. We're not going out and checking to make sure everyone's in compliance. My point is this, I mean, it's a very nice-looking structure, 6 inches, and they're willing to take it off the utility easement, which was going to be another question, but you already answered it. It doesn't seem that 6 inches over, when it doesn't interfere with anything, seems like a huge, I mean, does it even rise to the level of variance? Because I know that staff level can do modifications on many things within a certain percentage of building heights, building square footage, setbacks, and all of those things.
Okay. So this falls within the range that per the code requires the minor modification.
So not a variance. Staff could do it at staff level.
Which is considered a variance in the code.
But
it does
staff,
require the issuance. So there is a lower level.
But you could do it at staff level?
The initial determination is a staff level determination.
Okay. Thank you.
City Attorney, your light's on.
I was hoping the building official could answer a question, because it was not clear to me from the report whether the 2.5, what is the building code requirement in terms of the setback to the side yard for this type of structure?
Welcome, Sheila.
No.
Sharon.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. The building code has different requirements depending on the distance. So if it's 2.5 feet, in this case, the wall would have to be 1 hour fire resistance rated, and there would not be openings allowed in the wall at this distance. So there are different requirements depending on what the code calls the fire separation distance. So that's the distance between the exterior wall and the property line.
Okay, and that's because this is an accessory structure?
No, because it's close to the sideline.
Could you, the question I have is if this becomes will this become an occupied dwelling? Will this become a dwelling, or this is just an accessory structure that's not approved as a dwelling. Do you know what the application is for?
We'll have the applicant
I
be
can
coming
speak
up.
to that
They'll
if you
have their
like.
time.
The proposal, this is not a separate dwelling unit, but it is finished space, so it's considered habitable space. And I would also mention that the applicant or homeowner has mentioned in their letter a willingness to rebuild that wall as necessary to conform to the building code. So there's basically a fire rating requirement. So they're aware of this issue. As mentioned, it was built without permits, so we haven't inspected it to determine if it does or does not meet those requirements. But as mentioned since the homeowner has said they would rebuild it, there's sort of a presumption that some modification would be necessary.
So, because I'm focusing on the finding that it would not violate some health and safety rule, and so I just wanted to make sure that it was possible to meet the building code if the variants were met for the zoning code separation.
Yeah, it's our judgment, it would be, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Those are some of my questions. I was just wondering, was this built for someone to live in? Because it's pretty cute. And I was
Looking
just
for a
wondering.
place to rent,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, really. Okay, so that's why I was wondering, and Councilmember Mahan did bring up a valid point here. If you look at some of these other structures from the aerial view, it's like, I know it looks very close to me. I can't really tell, but it does. And they're all seem to be in that one corner, so it doesn't look like it's interfering with anybody else, but I'm just concerned that, my question was, do you have to demolish this entire thing to bring it to code, or like what is the procedure? What is the procedure on this? So if we uphold the denial, then they have to rip this sucker down, right? Is that what you're telling me?
So they have really three options, I would say. One is to physically move the structure,
Okay.
6 inches. That'll be more difficult now, particularly that it's been plumbed, but it's theoretically possible. Second would be to remove that wall and build it at 6 inches in, and then the third would be to remove the structure.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay.
And I think the homeowner again mentions in their letter that they discussed those options with a contractor, and it was really cost prohibitive for them to look at those alternatives.
Okay. So why was, in the beginning, why was this not permitted? I mean, what was the, I don't,
Well, they did not seek to have permits, right? They just started the construction without applying for permits.
Okay. Okay, so to answer that question, I'll let everybody else ask their questions.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
is our question period.
Oh, this is our
so,
question period? Okay.
Because we do want to get to the
applicant.
appeal
Yeah.
appellant.
Yeah.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, so at some point during the construction, like when you showed the picture of the construction in process, a representative from the city did go out and basically tell them to stop and gave them the options, and they basically kind of ignored that and went ahead?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Mahan, you have more questions?
Yes, I do, actually. So what is the distance between the wall and the property line?
It's 2 feet 5 inches.
It doesn't look like that on, oh, I see. Okay, it says actually 2 feet 6 inches. And what is the requirement for that side yard setback?
It's 3 feet.
Okay. So it really doesn't impinge 6 to 7 inches. It's really closer to 4 or 5 inches. The plan shows 6.2, and you said it was you just said it was 6.5, or 2, I'm sorry. The plans say 2.6, and you just said it was 2.5. Actually,
Well,
the plans show it a little
yeah.
further than that.
This plan shows 2 foot 6 inches.
Yeah.
So I believe that's what they're proposing. It's close enough.
But there is a fourth option, if I understand our building code, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. And that is to leave it where it is, but build that, I guess is it the east wall? The wall along the property line to building code with a firewall, no openings, et cetera. I had to do that with my garage because I was replacing a garage. It's actually on the 0 lot line because it's in the old quad, they all were. And the only requirement I had to do is on the rear wall, put the firewall construction on it and have no openings on that wall. And so that is a fourth option, is it not?
So our practice has been when there are legally non-conforming structures, to allow them to remain to be improved in some manner, but in this case, there's no evidence that the structure was ever legally established.
But they're trying to do that now. So if we were to approve the modification, they would have to rebuild that wall to meet building code, i.e. the firewall, with no openings on that wall, and that could be then permitted, is that right?
So essentially, right, if the council were to grant the minor modification, we would still follow the building code.
Sure, and the owners would be willing to do that, I would assume. Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, if I could ask the appealing party to please come forward, and you have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to explain our situation. First of all, the structure was actually there in existing location, so we just updated, and it was on the easement, and we didn't change the location. We just updated, and the reason we did that, I'm a psychologist, and I have a baby. Well, I was pregnant 6-7 months, and we had like 10 IVF to have her, and financially, I just wanted to continue working, and I wanted to be close to the baby. So I just wanted to use that as an office. Our home is small, plus I don't want to bring anybody to home anyway. I wanted to do some testing and some paperwork and just invite some of my old clients. So that was the purpose. We got the house in 2015, just like a little over 2 years ago, and we did some modifications to house, and we did all of them with permit. And when we went to the city to work on those, we were given a plan like that, and the plan, the structure was in the existing location, and it has an approved sign on it. So we didn't think it was an illegal structure. So we just, well, it was still our fault. We could have, go to city to update, but I was super pregnant and I was in a rush. I couldn't think clear. So, I mean, previously we did everything under code. Just that one, just wanted to get it done, and we were already communicating with a contractor and didn't have much time, and you know how difficult it is to get a contractor. So, and then when we get the stop order, I did not ignore. I went to the city, again, super pregnant, many times. But then every time I went there, I was given totally different information. I was totally confused, and it was so difficult for me to understand the terminology. And then we talked to the neighbor who we thought that he complained, just next guy. He has a second floor, so I think he was not happy that he did not know how I was going to use the structure. He thought that maybe we're going to rent it out, and I think he didn't like the idea, but unfortunately he didn't come and talk to us. He just made the complaint. We didn't have any trees, so he could see from his balcony to our structure, so he felt, I guess, uncomfortable with that. So I talked to him. I said, I'm going to put some trees, and we discussed, and we just put some trees, and it looks really, really nice. There's no privacy issue right now. And then again, I went to the city so many times, and then unfortunately my husband paid the contractor a little too much money. We couldn't take it back, and then I was talking to the person, John. Like I was asking, okay, like what happens? Like if I continue, if I just finish it, because it was really close to finish. Everything is finished, and it's just outside, and it was winter time. And then he said, well, we are complaint-based, and if nobody complains, nothing will happen. So I was naive. I just said, okay, we paid the money, and then and I don't know where I was going to be able to work with me being pregnant with the baby. I didn't want to look at the structure like that for a long time. And because he said that, it's just, we are complaint-based, and if nobody said anything, nothing will happen. So we just completed. But then again, I really tried hard. I don't know if I'm sure there are records that I've been there many times. So, and really what we are asking, we are gonna legalize, we wanna legalize, we have to legalize anyway. we don't want to tear it down. It's, we already spent a lot of money. We are trying to just reduce the cost by asking that, allowing us that 6-inch. It's not much, and we already discussed, we are going to put a firewall just the way you described. And we are willing to, take it back, and whatever, the city is asking to legalize, we are just going to do that. And we are still going to have, big financial loss in it, but we are just trying to minimize.
Okay,
All right.
is that it?
I don't know if you
You
have
still have a
any
little time
questions.
left. We're going to ask you some questions, though, so.
Yeah, I think it might be, I don't know, like maybe I missed some things, but I think it will be helpful if you have questions.
Yes, we do have questions. So I see the lights on. Councilmember Mahan, you have questions?
Yes, I was going to ask if you can pass those drawings around. And when did you get those drawings from?
Like maybe in 2015, I think, when we first got the house.
And when
I
did you?
think it's in the it's on our agenda.
When did you
It's in
buy
the
that?
packet.
2015, at the beginning of 2015. Well, they say that just because there is an approved sign, that does not mean they don't know what is in it. They assume it was, I don't know what they assumed.
But you purchased the house with this structure there?
Yes, this plan is submitted in 2009, way before us.
Oh, okay. So this plan was submitted in 2009 by a previous owner?
Yes,
And do you know when that structure was built?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
So city can be confusing. Sorry, I'm in the planning.
Yeah. Some, yeah.
I don't think
Councilmember
those.
Mahan, any?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't think those are the plans that are in here. The plans that are in here are their plans. These are plans she got from the city that show it in 2009 being there, as I understand. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Davis?
My question was, how come your contractor didn't know that you were supposed to get permits in the city? Because most contractors that deal in our city know that things have to be permitted. So I was just curious as how come he didn't tell you that when you were going through this whole process. So that was just, I was curious about that one.
He's just getting his contract, actually, like contractor license. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Councilmember Mahan?
To follow up on that, but if the building was already there, were you just like remodeling it?
Yeah, we made it super nice. I mean, it was nice from outside, but
So I
we
mean,
made
is
it
that
nice
why the
inside.
contractor may have thought, because he wasn't seeking new building permits if you were remodeling what was there?
Yes, yes. I say one more time, I'm not sure if I understood.
Well, if the building was, if the structure was there and you were just remodeling it and updating it and improving it, the contractor may not have thought he needed a permit because the structure was there.
Actually, we had the conversation. We asked him, can you make it this, like, in the future, we want to get the permit because we know it adds to house value, but I didn't want to deal with that at the moment. But he said, oh, I'm going to do it everything up to code. So he did that. So my thinking was that, okay, the worst case scenario, we are just going to open up some walls from outside and they're going to inspect. Since he's doing everything up to code, like I was making sure that he would get like really large beams on top of the window so that, if anybody opens up, it wouldn't be a problem. So it's just I was in a rush that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the appellant? Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm reading the letter that you submitted, and in it, you said that you felt that the city did not, that there was okay, you were misguided by the site plan you were provided by the city. And when you brought the issue up to the city, the officers claimed that the city did not know the nature of the structure, even though it approved its location. That doesn't make sense. I mean, how would they not know?
Exactly. Thank you.
No, what I mean is, I mean, you must have, I mean, they must have, I mean, they had a drawing, they had the drawing, they must have known what the plan was.
That's my
but
logic.
But still, I mean, it seems like,
The plan is not from us, the plan is there, but then even when he was presenting, it's like, sounded like the structure was never there, but the structure was there.
Mr. Crabtree, did you, I mean, you saw the site plan, I mean, did you?
Well, the appellant is there any
still
other
speaking,
questions
I'm
of her? And
sorry.
then we can
Okay.
go back to
Yep,
the
yep,
city.
okay, thank you, thank you.
Are there any other questions? So I have a couple questions. So when you bought the property, this structure was already there, and do you have any idea when it was constructed through old maps? Do you have any
Actually,
idea?
I'm just seeing it's 2005, it has to be before 2005.
So sometime before 2005, and you bought the property in 2015?
Yes,
Okay. So when you bought the property, you started to make improvements in the main house,
we
of
added-
which you obtained permits for.
yes, yes,
So when the inspectors were out,
they saw it.
they saw it, but there was no inspection of that unit until there was a complaint from your neighbor
Yes.
about the property.
Yes.
So now there was a complaint, so you've made some offers to do some improvements to the property to bring it as close to code as possible, but we're off 6 or 7 inches,
6, yes.
6 inches. All right, thank you.
Two. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, now I think that, do we have any cards, City Clerk? Do you see any cards there? Okay. Is there any member of the public wanting to speak on this? And then we'll actually answer some more questions after that. If there's a member of the public, please come forward.
I just have a general question. If you approve this, can they then turn this into a rental unit or do whatever they want to it, and anybody else can then, this just go off? Can they then, anybody else can put a unit with 2.5 feet of clearance on the side, and it shouldn't matter if somebody else has done something wrong. 2 wrongs don't make a right. You need to deal with each property separately, so it doesn't matter what the neighbors have done as far as I'm concerned. That's immaterial. But if you approve this, then anybody else can do it too. Is that kind of the basis of, you're kind of setting a precedence? Is that what happens? Or is that how you set a precedence if you approve this? I don't understand what the underlying is, and then they can turn it into a rental or something else, and I don't understand. To me, it seems like it has huge ramifications if you approve this and allow it to, I mean, if you have standards, you either keep the standards or you don't keep the standards, and I don't understand if it doesn't meet the standards, it doesn't meet the standards. So I don't understand what guidelines you take if you don't accept the standards. So if you could explain that to me, I don't understand how that works either. Thank you.
Thank you. All I can say is all units, all properties are unique. There's codes, there's standards, but everyone has unique circumstances. I've never seen many identical ones on any property at any time. So is there any other member of the public wanting to speak? If not, Community Development Director, if you'd like to come forward. And there's a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion second. Thank you, that's unanimous. Public hearing is closed. So I think Councilmember Watanabe, you had a question for Mr. Crabtree?
Yes, is the, thank you, Mayor. The site plan that's addressed in the letter submitted by the applicant our appellant, is that something that the city prepared? I mean, when you were discussing?
So I've put it up here on the screen. There's a 2-page plan set that was submitted for this project, which was a kitchen remodel, a bathroom addition in the main house. So at that time, the city building division staff were really looking at the proposed scope of work and focused on that. They did not review, while it's true that there is on this plan, it shows a structure at the same location, which I understand was probably a storage shed, but I could maybe could get more information on that. But that was not reviewed as part of this plan set. They were really just focused on what they understood to be the scope of work. But the homeowners mentioned when they got a copy of this plan, they saw that that structure was depicted there, and so they assumed it was permitted. But there was never a review and permit issued for it. The other thing I would just add is that the amount of work is fairly substantial. Anytime for the benefit of the general public, anytime you do windows, re-roofing, plumbing fixtures, permits are required.
Thank you.
Staff, I'm not sure, city manager, city attorney, who has their light on?
Yeah, I just,
It's not on, has to turn red, yeah.
sorry. I just wanted to make sure the council understood what would be required for them to overturn, to basically uphold the appeal and allow this structure to not have the proper setback. And it's the, if you look at the resolution in the packet, the Planning Commission made opposite findings to what the appellant is now requesting. And the legal standard would be, you would have to, and I haven't, frankly, I haven't heard within the public hearing tonight, I haven't heard any facts upon which you might rely to reverse the decision of the Planning Commission. But let me go over the legal standards, and that is, apparently they would have to show, the appellant would have to show unusual conditions applying to the land or building which do not generally apply in the same district. The Planning Commission found that the project site is regularly shaped and has an adequate space in the rear yard for an accessory building to meet the standard setback requirements. They would have to show that the granting of the minor modification is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights of the applicant. And the Planning Commission found that an accessory building would be permitted by right if constructed within the current standards, and a substantially similar accessory building can be accomplished on the site in a manner that conforms with the applicable zoning setback requirements. So you'd have to somehow make a finding that was not accomplished. And then finally, that the granting of the minor modification is in keeping with the purpose of the intent of the zoning code. And I'm not sure how you'd do that, but so, those are what you would have to find. You'd have to express those if you were going to change the decision here. So at a minimum, if you were of a mind that you wanted to grant the appeal, you would have to express what those findings would be. Or typically what would happen is the appellant would somehow offer something in favor of the findings that would have to be made. I haven't heard that offer made tonight. So if you wanted to make this finding, you'd have to somehow come up with that.
All right, I have a question, city attorney, on that. Could our community development director, could he have made an administrative action to approve this?
I don't see how he could have. With the facts that have come up so far tonight, it doesn't make sense, because it just simply doesn't meet the zoning code. And there's nothing, the appellant has not made any assertion. Typically when people apply for variances, they'll come forward with a statement of specific facts that meet the findings required in the zoning code. And I don't see that in any of the applications filed by this particular appellant in this case.
They're lay people, I'm just saying, they're lay people that have come forward, they're not attorneys, they're coming forward and making their case. They made some assumptions that there was an existing structure. This happens all the time in our community. We have a lot of these existing structures, whether they're legal or not. One never knows unless it's disclosed when they're buying their property, and it's on a plan. It sounds like there was a lot of misinterpretation, maybe misunderstanding, maybe some miscommunication, other things. I'm not sure. They may have known that if they were coming to present their case tonight, that they had to present a bunch of findings. I just don't expect that of them, at this point, that they would have to do that. So I understand what you're saying. It's the law. It's the law that, if you want to make this action, you have to do these, you have to make these findings. I know in the past, many times we have said we've approved projects, and we have the findings come back, at a separate time, and we've done it all sorts of ways. So I think that's a high level of expectation for our community to come forward when they have an accessory unit that was already there that they're trying to improve. Anyways, those are just my comments, but thank you. I understand that's what needs to be done. Councilmember Mahan.
Actually, Mayor, I think you hit it on the head, because to me, that is the overriding consideration, and that is the unusual condition, in that the structure existed in its existing location. The modification is very minor in nature, equal or less than 6 inches from the side yard setback requirement. It can be rebuilt to the building code requirements, and it is a very unnecessary burden on the home property owner to move the structure or demolish it and rebuild it. Had they never touched the structure, we wouldn't even be here, and the structure would be right where it is. And in fact, they are improving the structure by taking it out of the utility easement area. So I believe that those are sufficient findings to grant the appeal and override the Planning Commission's denial, and that would be my motion based on those unusual conditions.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. City Attorney, your light's on. Would you like further comments? No? Okay. There's a motion and a second. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. I remember my struggling as a planning commissioner about making findings, and when I had this naive notion that when I went on the planning commission that we could just change things and do what we wanted to do, and the
we are the center of what's possible,
right.
so you know that.
Right.
Okay.
And the staff and our very able land use attorney told me, no, you have to, so I struggle with this idea with the findings. And I'm not sure if, what Councilmember Mahan suggested, if that meets the standard of that. I'm very sympathetic to the family in question, and it's kind of like, okay, now that we see all those other structures out there, why don't we go knocking on a few doors? It's always lovely when one of your neighbors turns you in on something like this. But I wanted to ask the city attorney about the notion of the precedents. And, since this sounds like these, once again, the findings are not what in my experience as a planning commissioner for 5.5 years of what we typically did, does this somehow, I don't know that it's able to set a precedence in terms, except just for our practice, but in terms it doesn't really impact what our ordinances say. So that for one question, and the other, is there any measure about the adequacies of the findings that Councilmember Mahan put in her motion?
Could you repeat the last part of the question?
So is there a standard for kind of assessing whether, or a question about whether, Councilmember Mahan, she presented some findings, whether we know that those are adequate to the test of the law?
You're putting me in a very difficult position.
What about precedent?
Well, no, this would be a very bad precedent if you did this. I mean, it would not be a good precedent, because this actor, this family here deliberately violated a stop work order, and you're rewarding them for doing that. Whereas if they had not done the construction, they would have not had this situation. So, and I don't really know what kind of evidence they've really presented of what the nature of what was there before. I mean, we really don't know what that structure looked like or what it was used for. So, I don't know, anything about that. And I'm just saying it's the facts that are presented tonight do not appear to me to support the findings that would be necessary for you to do this. However, if you do this, the only person that would challenge it would be somebody else. I mean, I wouldn't take a writ from this. I mean, that's not my role to do. But you'd have this on as a city council action under these facts, and it would make it more difficult for other people who would choose to do things this way to be harder for you as the precedent setter to then deny somebody else who would follow this course of action.
Thank you, City Attorney. Councilmember O'Neill. Are there any other comments? Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. This is really hard, but because I mean, I've heard the appellant and reading through the document, listening to our community development director, and just, you know, I know we're Santa Clara, we're the center of what's possible, but, you know, we've had some issues, discussions lately about following the law and the importance of following the law. And that's been my message in another discussion lately. And so as much as you know, I sympathize with the situation, I feel I just don't feel like I can justifiably say, you know, let it go against the appeal and stand by the appeal because, again, you know, we're here to follow the law, and so I have to stand by that. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Caserta?
Yes, yeah, follow the law implies if you don't follow what you're perceiving as the law is, therefore you're doing something illegal. And usually when you do something illegal, you have to go to jail. No one's going to jail on this issue. No one's going to jail on the curfew issue. This is 6 inches. I disagree with the city attorney on precedent. Our precedent is a case-by-case basis. What Mayor Gilmore said, I completely support. These are lay people simply trying to improve their living situation, and we're talking about 6 inches. This is compassion, this is common sense, this has nothing to do with the buzzword of following the law.
Okay. And anyone else? I really didn't give the applicant the opportunity to make any closing statement. So would you like to make any closing statement, applicant? Okay, thank you. And I apologize I didn't get to you earlier.
No, it's okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, like you said, we are lay people and we don't know, like, I'm sure there are some magical words that we could use and that will be helpful, but I don't know those. And I'm really sorry that, you know, we are, you know, taking your time like that and we didn't mean to. And we are, you know, if we are not going to be rewarded because we are going to be still losing a lot of money on this. We are willing to, you know, do whatever it takes to legalize it. We are still going to legalize, and I'm sorry. I mean, I obviously we made a mistake. You know, we have been kind of. I had my cesarean. John called, you know, about the unit that we need to demolish it. It wasn't easy for me, and then he was keep calling. It's just, this is our first home. We did not know, and we were really good up until that time, but I just couldn't think really clear, and, you know, like, again, we are gonna be losing a lot of money. And I would appreciate if you can let go of the 6-inch. I really don't, I mean, we are gonna put the firewall, we are gonna do whatever it takes to legalize it. So we are not asking to permit an illegal structure. And most importantly, really, like, you see the approved sign, and that was deceiving for us. And I emphasized many times, but this was here, and they say, well, we didn't know what it was. But then if you actually can look at like Redfin and stuff like that, you can see the old structure, it was very similar. We just put some flowers, made it prettier, but the structure was in the same height, same dimension, same width, and same location was there. We just made it prettier. So it was on slab, it had the roof, it had everything. So they just did not know what it was inside. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. You can put a desk and it can be office. So I would appreciate if you can, show compassion and, you know, allow that 6-inch. We are going to be knocking down the backside, and we are going to make it up to the code. We don't want to create any precedents for any illegal thing, and I don't think it's going to be like that because we are going to be legalizing it. So thank you for considering, and thank you very much for your time. I don't know what else to say, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Colstad.
Thanks, Mayor. The applicant just made a statement there that she is willing to do what is necessary to make the building legal. And the planning director, community development director, mentioned that there was a remedy that he suggested 2 or 3 possible, and then Patty came up with another one, possible solutions to deal with this issue. If these folks are willing to make the building legal, do what modifications they have to do to make it conform to the rules. I know there's a motion on the floor, but I'm just saying that if there was a way to get the 2 of them together so they could reach an accommodation, maybe a little bit more work on the building, and then it's legal, I think that might be a good solution that we all might be able to compromise on.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan?
Thank you, and I appreciate those comments, Mr. Kolstad, but I believe that this is the compromise that we're trying to get to. They're taking off the back portion, so it's out of the utility easement. The compromise is that they'll be 6 inches into the side yard setback with a minor modification that's allowable under the law. It's legal. It is a case-by-case basis. It's not precedent setting, and they're going to do the firewall to make it conform to the building code, which is different from the zoning law, the building code. So it will conform to the building code in all aspects. It will be a safe structure, and the structure was there before. That's, to me, that is the overriding condition that sort of everything else can flow from. And I do emphasize, the law allows for these modifications, and this is a modification that could have been done at the staff level. And when I was on the architectural review, we did many modifications at the staff level. You refer the building heights to them, you refer the side yard or rear yard setbacks, even front yard setbacks. If they're within that minor range, they can be done at staff level without going through the Planning Commission variance process. So it is not anything against the law. We are actually following the law that allows for these kinds of minor modifications and accommodations for folks that are trying to do the right thing. So I think my motion is that sort of compromise.
Thank you. I don't see any other lights. I just wanted to make some comments. I'm going to be supporting the motion. I believe that the applicant is sincere in what they're trying to do. They bought the property with an existing structure. They're doing what they can. The only thing they can't do is move it over 6 inches. That's a problem, but I look at these things on a case-by-case basis and trying to be reasonable and use some common sense in this case. They are improving the structure in the backyard, which is, not what I can say for many structures in many backyards in Santa Clara. I think we're going to be facing this, especially when we look at these new accessory units that we're going to be looking at to help our housing crisis in the city with the new laws. But I think they're doing everything they can, and I think in this particular case, it makes sense to me to approve this, this appeal. So I will be supporting the motion. So lights on the motion? And that passes 6-1. Thank you very much. All right. Next, we have $17B, which is continuation of agenda item 17B, pass to print the ordinance. Do we need to officially make a motion to continue this, City Manager? Or did you want to make some comments on that, about the affordable housing ordinance in Santa Clara City Code?
The city attorney wants to make a couple of comments, but I think you should approve a motion.
To continue
Officially
this?
continuing it.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney.
So the question is, depending on what motion you'd like to make, this was set for a public hearing, and that's why it's on this agenda. The state has passed a raft of new housing statutes that we wanted you to be aware of before you considered the affordable housing fee. And I provided you with a very, very brief summary of those statutes. So the question really is, this has been set for a public hearing. If you were going to return within a reasonable time, you could just continue the public hearing. But if you just want to continue the whole matter, we could reset the public hearing once you're ready for this to come back. So those are the really two choices. For example, I've heard that there may be some interest in reconvening the working group. Is that part of it, or what exactly are you trying to do that I'm trying to respond to your concerns about continuing, whether you want to continue the public hearing or just bring it back with a new public hearing date set.
City Manager, before I go to the lights.
Sure. As for process, I would recommend that it's been requested that we look at the new bills that have been signed by the governor. We analyze them with respect to implications to the policy and the council direction that has already been issued. Once we assess the potential impacts of these new 7 signed bills, we then determine whether we go back to the working group based on potential impacts and where there's alignment and where there's areas of non-alignment, and then we schedule for hearing and do the appropriate work and bring to council the legislation.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Caserta?
Yeah, yes, I am. Hello, okay. I appreciate the Cliff Notes version from the city attorney. That was helpful to me, and I appreciate the comments by the city manager. My only thought on this is I think this is transparent and methodical. I know I personally have been getting some calls of anxiety from some of our stakeholders that want this done yesterday, knowing that our working group got together over 8 months ago in totality. So, city manager, I would just ask a little sense of urgency that we could get this back, definitely before December 1, if that's possible. I guess that's a question. Is that doable? And then, of course, based on the answer, reaching out to stakeholders and letting them know the rationale of why, because some of them thought we'd actually have this on our next council meeting on the 24th, so.
Yes. I do want to acknowledge that at the time that I had considered deferring or continuing the item to October 24th, it was with 1505 in mind. However, Councilmember Mahan listed an additional items that I then had to go back and say, we've got to really slow this down in addition to my own learning curve. I'd like to handle this on an urgent basis. I understand the time sensitivity. However, it is difficult until we do the analysis of the 7 signed bills to really truly understand the context for which we have to move forward with our work. I would be open to presenting, as we move this work forward, to putting information on the pending list as well as through the manager's weekly memo that will then move out to the blog that we just established this week. And I have been in communications with some of the stakeholders to let them know the reasons and purpose for my request to continue the item.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mahan?
Yeah, thank you. So I did forward to the city attorney, and I do really appreciate his quick work on this, to get at least some summary of and a whole raft of these bills where they were all signed into law at one time. The most significant is 1505, which allows inclusionary zoning, which had been prohibited under case law for a couple of years here. So that is the biggest change. The other ancillary bills can affect somewhat our policies going forward, but I guess my question is, if we want to consider including inclusionary zoning in this ordinance, does it make sense? I mean, could we pass this now and get something going and redo it later when we understand more the impact of the new bills? Or does it make more sense to get this information first and come up with a better ordinance, which, yes, can take many weeks, I would think?
Just very briefly, I think the key would be, yes, you could pass this first, and you did build, or if you recall, you did build into the ordinance a grace period. So we have the grace period within which to bring back an amendment possibly to require the, it really depends on timing, like what are you really trying to accomplish with it? The key, though, however, to the mandatory nature of requiring the inclusionary zoning, requiring the units on site as opposed to paying a fee in lieu is a pretty big change. So I just think that whatever feelings you might have or concerns you might have about the grace period and phasing this in, you'd have to take that into account in terms of how much outreach you did on the inclusionary requirement, as well as whether you'd want to remove the ability to pay a fee in lieu if you were going to require the inclusionary element. So there's some pretty big issues at stake there. So I'm just not sure what you want to do with timing.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
I want to thank you, Brian, because we kind of were looking at this through Cities Association, and I would like to make the staff recommendation that we have time to kind of go at this, because this was a moving target, and there are some things in here that need to be kind of vetted out a little bit more, especially for what we already have. And a lot of these bills, yes, I understand about the affordable housing, you know, and these accessory units and all this other stuff, but I think that we need to do this methodically. And I would like to make the staff recommendation to move this down the road with the city manager and you with the timetable that is appropriate to bring this back to us so that we have a better understanding before we start passing things and moving things around to that might not be feasible for us in the city. And so that is my motion, is to recommend staff recommendation.
So you're talking about, is the motion to continue
Continue. The
the
recommendation
item,
is to continue the
public
item,
hearing?
correct.
All right, is there a second? Motion and a second to continue the item? Any other discussion on the council, and then any member of the public want to talk about the motion to continue? Deborah?
Just a clarification, if we were to adopt this ordinance and it was in conflict with the state laws that were passed, which would take precedence? Would we have to modify ours, or would we have to adopt and abide by the 7 laws that were passed? That would be my question. Which one would we have to follow? Thank you.
Thank you. Are we able to answer that question? City Attorney?
I can answer that question.
Thank you.
Our ordinance would not violate any of these laws. What is it, 1505? 1505 expands our authority. It doesn't restrict our authority.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor to continue this agenda item. If the motion to continue, I didn't even open, did I open the public hearing? I didn't. So, just a point of order.
If we were to, I don't think we opened the public
No, I
hearing, and
didn't
if you were
open
to
it.
continue the public hearing, you'd have to do it to a date certain. So I think we're just simply continuing the item.
Continuing
and
the
then we'll have to
item, period.
renotice the public hearing.
We don't have to.
No, we
close
will
it.
have to.
Okay, so close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close?
No.
Oh, wait, no, we
We
don't.
don't need to close the
So
public
just the
hearing.
motion to continue on
Just
the
continue
floor.
the
Motion
agenda
and
item.
second, motion to continue. All right, thank you for that, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have reports of members and special committees. Oh, did I miss something?
Reports for action?
Oh, I'm so sorry, and there's a lot of people here for this. Reports for action, pass to print an ordinance amending Section 18104-060, application to existing businesses of Chapter 18104, massage establishments of Title 18 zoning of the Code of the City of Santa Clara, California, which extends the amortization period for existing massage establishments by 1 year to December 31st, 2018. I'm not sure who's taking this one. City manager, city attorney? Oh, Andrew. I was wrong.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Much of what's in front of you was just read in the subject line, but this is a proposed ordinance amending Title 18, specifically regulations related to massage establishments. And as it stands today, our ordinance would impose new requirements upon existing establishments. And the proposal would extend by 1 year a provision that allows existing establishments to continue operation whether or not they conform to the new standards. So this would basically grant existing massage establishments another year to continue operation. And the intent is that during that time, the city would review the regulations as they were previously adopted and determine if those are in fact still the regulations that we think most appropriate for the city, and could come back with an ordinance that would change those potentially. And so if we're going in a different direction, yet to be determined, this grants those existing businesses another year while we work through that process and determine what is exactly the regulatory environment we need here in Santa Clara. So with that, available to answer any questions.
All right, we'll start with Councilmember Kolstad.
Thanks, Mayor. I talked to some folks that are in this business, and first I just want to say I like this idea of moving it a year ahead so they have more time to relocate or do whatever. But several things occurred to me when we were discussing this. Some of the folks that spoke the last time this was before us were representing a establishment on Stevens Creek Road near Cabot. And I don't know when that business opened, but I remember, because Councilmember Mahan didn't like this one residential development that we approved on Cabot. It was real tall and it overlooked the single-family homes just to the east. And I think those are the homes that triggered this ordinance, that particular business, when they built those apartments on Cabot, then this business that I think was already established now has to move because we approved residential within the 500 feet. If it's kind of a chicken or the egg question here. If the business was there, then they built a residential, which forces the business to have to move. And since we've been in the business lately of approving a lot of residential developments along the El Camino Real, which has always been a commercial retail district, as we approve these apartment complexes, condos, senior housing, and that, we might be triggering this ordinance to make other massage establishments be required to leave because they're within 500 feet, but the massage places might have already been there for several years. So I'm thinking that maybe we ought to carve out an exemption for those. If we did something as a council by approving a project that forces a business out of business, that seems unfair to me. And maybe there should be some carve out for those situations. As we continue to build more and more residential around town, we could be running the massage businesses into another city or something. I don't know. Just something to consider. We have a year to think about it if we pass this request, which I hope we do. But that's something to think about.
So Andrew, this request is to keep the status quo for the next year?
Right. Essentially, it would give another, the status quo being that the amortization is in advance, that we're not actively enforcing it, what gives us another year for existing establishments to stay where they are.
Until we figure something else out or amend,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and just to speak a little bit to that, the way the ordinance was drafted, it has this amortization in it. Sometimes when cities adopt new land use regulations, existing legal ones become legal non-conforming, as sort of Councilmember Colsa was just describing. And in other cases, as we did here, you actually put in a time limit and say you're legal up until that time period. So we adopted this ordinance with the time limit, which was due to be expiring here soon. This grants another year before we hit that time limit.
So I know we put this into place predominantly prior to Super Bowl because of all the issues regarding that particular event. And, different, I'm just going to say bad actors in town that move into town, open up establishments and that aren't on the up and up, and our police departments had to deal with. So we're past that, but I think, many very legitimate businesses were affected by this particular ordinance. So between now and the next year, this will give us time to go back and relook at this and make sure that our legitimate businesses are able to thrive and we are, able to eliminate the bad actors in town. And I don't know how we're going to do that, but does this then gives us time to do that in the next year? City attorneys?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
the
want to
intent.
make sure that that's really the direction we're looking at. Yes. Is it enough time for us to figure this out?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
I think it was written that way.
okay. All right, Councilmember Davis, you have a question, and if
Well, I just
there's,
wanted to go to the motion thing, but you have cards, right?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, Community Director. So I do have 3 cards now, Linda Zhu, Wei Wei Chen, and Dinah Cotton. If you all want to come forward. Good evening.
Madam Mayor, council people, members, the new city
Dinah,
manager, welcome.
you want to speak in the,
Oh, sorry,
thanks.
I can get really loud. The new city manager, we need you, welcome. City attorney, welcome. And city clerk. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we have quite a few people that were in this situation. And the funny thing was, when we developed those homes on Cabot Avenue, this was the farthest thing from our mind, was to put somebody out of business. We've been there 39 years, and this ordinance was passed, and we were not notified. We're the property owners. We were not notified. This directly affects my business. It affects the, it affects the lease process. It affects the small business forward planning. You can't plan when you've got a deadline. Even a year, 12 months is really not fair to small business. They plan ahead. Right now we're at a month-to-month lease because, we don't know what city planners are going to do with the ordinance. And I sent an email. I wanted to meet with you before tonight, but it's been 2 years these people have been suffering, not knowing if they're going to be legal. This is an embarrassment for the massage industry. It's kind of a slap on the face. We got a certified letter this year, May 21st, unsigned from the city. I ended up with the planning department, I guess. It was copied the city attorney's office, police department, permitting, tax unit, finance department, municipal services. We didn't get a copy. There was nobody to talk to. I can pass out an email I photocopied that I sent to the city manager's office that I guess nobody saw, but it just doesn't seem fair. It just really doesn't seem fair. We really appreciate the year. That's great. But, But we really hope that you could pass something longer for these businesses to plan and for the property owners. One of these people here gave notice to their landlord that the city passed an ordinance, they were illegal. They told the landlord, sorry, I can't sign a lease. And the landlord, released the space. It's just good business.
All right, thank you, Dinah. Wenwei, and then Linda? Whoever wants to speak? Okay.
My name is Linda Zhu. I moved.
Yeah, speak right into the microphone, Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm English not very good. I
No, it's
tried.
fine. It's good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you. I moved this building for almost 6 years. I'm lucky this spot the owner is 6 years I do really hard to this business, and I think I do this business is really good. I do this job almost 23 years, and I'm a single mom. I need this business because this business I all my income. I don't want to lose this business and my job too. And 6 years, I never no problem, no police coming, no problem for my, yeah. I just want to keep this business. Yeah, I take it by myself, take it my son too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Wei Chen. I have one massage shop in Santa Clara. I have many customers. They need massage. Yeah, so last year I have some letters that they say I need to move to somewhere. So I told the customer I cannot just stay here. They ask me why. So they need massage, you know that. And yeah, so I want to keep going the shop, just I have this, I can continue this business. I don't have nothing to talk. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you. Kate DeMoss, and then Michael Yaz. Thank you.
So I just want to say I've been a licensed therapist in the city since 1993, and I'm a therapist for 31 years. This is the language in the ordinance that was passed, and I do understand why it was passed because of the Super Bowl and the issue with trafficking. However, it's a kind of ordinance that existed 30 years ago that was considered for to prevent certain people setting up businesses in a city. Especially with the way the city of Santa Clara is laid out, if you keep the 500-foot ordinance, you're not going to be able to have sole practitioners probably practicing anywhere in the city. And if you even have a multi-therapist business like a Massage Envy, probably won't even be able to find a location in this city because of the way the city is designed. So please consider really how the language is being changed, because the 500-foot radius is extremely restrictive. And to be honest, why, if I'm a legitimate therapist, can't I practice next door to a school, hospital, residence, or whatever? I'm doing a legal business, and that's my take on it. you know, I'll just comment that massage is very necessary all over. I'm also the Western Regional Manager for the Dorn Companies out of Denver, Colorado. We place trained therapists in work situations around the country. And I am actually the existing therapist for Dorn at the Intel Corporation here in the city. So massage is a necessary business, and please treat us legitimate therapists like we would like to be treated. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Michael, and then Yo Wei Ba.
Yeah, my name is Michael Yao.
Hi, Michael.
Thank you, Mayor and City Councils. On behalf of my friends and families in the massage business, for the last 2 hours I've been sitting here, all I heard is, cities been planning with new parks, new projects with residential areas, stuff like that. It seems that all of those things are inviting more and more resident into the community. But for the past 2 years, that we're receiving letters and notifications from city indicates that we have to move out, right? And set us was coordinated was like you have to be away from 500 meters, and you have to be this way, you have to be that way. Or receive this kind of things. We don't understand. We're a legitimate business, just like any other restaurants, Starbucks, any other things. And Google's come to the city, come to this Bay Area. They provide, all kinds of services for the company employees, with restaurants, spas, maybe even massages there. But not all the coming up companies have similar services. We're coming. Here's our coming. We're coming to provide all the communities with services, right? Quality services. It's a legitimate business. Last time when we heard one of the city legal department people saying, compare all business with sex and illegal business. Why? I don't understand why you have this kind of thinking. I mean, when you invite Dell's or Intel's or this giant corporation come to the city, you're not compare those companies to AGIs or bad companies. But when we come to the town, we already there for many years, you started to compare us with other bad companies. It doesn't make any sense to us, right? So I need people use different ways of thinking, right? We just like Apple's, like Starbucks. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll become chain stores like Starbucks, right? So embrace it to us, right? It's probably you never experienced those kind of massage. You have a different way of thinking, and maybe even bad apples, rotting the whole thing. But you gotta use different way to think this way, right?
Thank you.
Embrace all the business into our community.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yo Wei Ba.
He needs a translator.
Is there one available? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
尊敬的市长和各位女士和先生们，我在这里，我想讲解一下。
Thank you, mayors and city councils. He's very happy to here to address his concerns.
因为呢，我是在 Santa Clara Lawrence Homestead 一个 shopping mall 里，是我们的马杀鸡店，是 Greenford Spa。
His shops is in massage shops is in Santa Clara,
Santa Clara Homestead 和 Lawrence。
across street of Lawrence and Homestead, in the shopping mall.
因为我们呢遵照市政府的要求，然后给我们接到了信件，就是我们截止到11月12号 close。
你这下面我没听懂。
我们他那CT来的信件，让我们到11月12号 close。 就是马杀鸡 yes。
He received a letter that the city has to close his shop this month. I mean, November this year.
我们的然后我们把这事情通知了我的房东。
He also notified his landlord.
房东收到这个信件以后，就 然后让我们做出什么时候结束合约。
And in response from the landlord, he immediately wrote letter to him, to give him various of, proposed to make him to move out.
但是我们签署到10月30号截止合约，然后在这中间收到政府的信又推迟1年，所以说我们现在不知道怎么去做。
So while he's dealing with his landlord, he received another letter from the city says, yes, you can extend your business to another year. So he's confused. He's in a bad situation, trying to convince the landlord whether he could extend the business or not. So he's in a very bad situation. City put him in a very bad situation.
我们的残疾人和做马杀鸡服的人特别的多，我的客户非常喜欢在我们这个地方，但是我们现在房东不给我们利息。
He is very welcomed by the community, disabled peoples and a lot of peoples there. However, it seems like city has a different view. City just want to push them out.
现在给房东把这文件发给房东，房东现在说我们已经签了close lease。
The landlord says, you're done, you got to move out.
我想问一下，市长同志，这些事情怎么样让我们这个损失怎么去弥补回来？
So he says, who's going to pay my damages? I got losses here. It's who's going to pay for it? All that. He has to move out. But then city already sent him a letter to extend 1 more year. But landlord says, no, you're done. You move out.
我们正经的5年合约还有1年时间才能各方面结束。
With the original contract with landlord, he can run business for 1 more year also. But either way, his business is damaged. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I don't have any other cards, so if anyone else would like to speak, please come forward. Debbie?
Hits just keep on coming. Yes, is it on?
Yeah, it's on. When the light's on, it's on.
Okay. This is a great example, just like the stadium. You got to take care of the people who are there first. Like the residents were there first, the massage parlors were there first. We got to take care of the people who are there first. This whole thing with these massage parlors, every time this becomes almost in place, we figure out it's not working. Can we get somebody to actually look at this and stop farting around with it and finally like scratch the whole thing? Because it seems like we don't know what we're doing with this whole thing. Somebody came up with a harebrained idea and they don't know what they're doing. Because we keep kicking this can down the road, causing a lot of people a lot of pain and angst and problems, and nobody knows what they're doing. Can't we just cancel it and forget it until somebody figures out what they're doing with this whole thing? This is like Camp Run Amok here with this whole ordinance. I just can't believe we can't figure this out. Somebody needs to look into how many violations do we have? Do we have any illegal massage parlors anywhere? Is there a reason to have this? Whose harebrained idea was this to begin with? I mean, it seems like we're creating a problem or causing one where we never had one. I sit here listening to this stuff and it just amazes me that we're spending so much time and money and energy and it appears we're creating a problem where we didn't have one. So maybe we should just bag it and start over and stop putting these people through so much pain and agony and just having such a negative impact. We look like we really don't know what the hell we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on this? Okay, I have a few lights. I'm going to start with Councilmember Davis.
I wanted to make the motion to approve the staff recommendation. I believe that the city attorney has gone through this, right, extensively. You've vetted this out correctly, as far as I can see. And I understand what's happening to these businesses, and I am probably your best advocate for massage. I go every 3 weeks because I need it from the stress of sitting up here. But I can honestly tell you that, yes, I find it extremely therapeutic. I just think that there was a question when the Super Bowl came. There was a net cast out, and some people got caught up in a lot of different things. I think we really need to look at that 500-foot range that Councilmember Colstat alluded to, if the business was there before the construction came in, then we really have to take a look at that because it's not fair. I mean, you're kind of, hurting people that were there first. So I don't know if we can add that to the, I don't know, was that part of the, when you did the whole ordinance? Was there something in there to redirect that a little bit? Could I add that?
No, I didn't write this ordinance. I'm just extending the date within which we have.
That's all we're doing is extending the date?
That's all we're doing tonight.
Okay, then,
You can,
okay,
you can,
then
you
I
can
would-
give us advice
Okay.
that you want, that's one of the things you want us to look at.
Yes, so then I would like to make a motion where we extend this for the year, we take a serious hardcore look at this 500-foot, whatever this is, whatever they're calling it. And really find out how many businesses are affected by this in the city. How many people do we have here that have permits to have these massage parlors in our city, and how they're being affected by this? Because we can't, we're trying to build mom and pops, and we're trying to build, revenue streams, and we're trying to do a lot of things with retail. So to destroy these people for a silliness just doesn't make any sense to me. So, and find out if the year is really relevant to these people. Do they have time, just really take a hardcore look at this. I don't really want to see businesses changed or these people are having problems with their landlords. I mean, to me, this just makes a lot of angst for a lot of people, and it's just not fair. So that would be my recommendation for you all. Thanks.
All right, that's a motion. And there's a second. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. Actually, I would like to ask the maker of the motion, the second, if they would consider extending this amortization period for 2 years until December 31st, 2019, and I'll give my reasons. I know our city attorney's office is dealing with some major litigations at this time. We're looking at just keeping the status quo. It appears that, any Super Bowl concerns are abated, and the existing businesses are operating fine. And we also have some major other ordinances that we're looking to do with the marijuana ordinance and a lot of other major new ordinances. So there's quite a burden on our city attorney's office, our city manager's office as well. And I don't think it will hurt just to have this amortization period go for 2 years. I also, by direction, would add to Councilmember Davis's direction to say something like, I would, for me personally, what I'm hearing from the public, from council, from our business owners, is some direction to draft the ordinance to accommodate our existing businesses and legitimate businesses as they, in this area of massage therapy, and to look at making any limitations reasonable in the areas of sensitive populations and grandfathering in those businesses that already exist from any new limitations. So those would be kind of the direction that I would be looking that this ordinance should take going forward. But I would ask if we could just make it 2019 and take some burden off our city attorney's office, because I don't think there's any harm in it.
I'll definitely go with the 2-year because I know that we are under the gun here. I know the city attorney is pressured. So I agree with the 2 years. I also agree with the grandfathering. If somebody's already had a business established in the city, then it seems to me that they've already been permitted and they've been doing legitimate business. So I'm good with that. What was the third one?
Oh, that we look at the limitations, the 500-foot, but that might not be reasonable. So we look at any limitations, make them reasonable and make them apply only in areas where there are sensitive populations, perhaps nursery schools or elementary schools or things like that.
Okay, would that be covered under what I said in the beginning as far as taking a look at that 500-foot rule, or do we need to add that to make sure that we cover all the bases?
I think you're just referring the things to look
Okay.
at,
Just
which
referring.
is fine. That
That's great.
doesn't, I
Okay.
mean, I don't think that necessarily has to be part of the motion, but
Right.
it's good to hear
Okay.
what your concerns are and what you want us to look at. City Clerk, changing this at this point to 2 years, is that any problem in terms of publishing this ordinance if we make the change tonight?
Turns red.
There we go. With regards to publishing the ordinance on our side, we would follow up tomorrow the same way we would any other ordinance. I don't know that that necessarily changes it. I defer to the city attorney's office about whether or not the normal practice would be one that would meet or not meet a litmus test for legal scrutiny.
No, I think as long as we print it properly, this is the first reading of the ordinance, correct?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
So I think as long as we print it properly, it's fine, and then the second reading will show that it's a two-year amortization.
Good. And let me also clarify that the motion that I have is the staff recommendation, although extending that to a 2-year time period. The remainder of the discussion that happened, which was quite robust, is direction to staff with regards to the general intent that they'd like to look into. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, the 2-year extension gives them the ability to do a deep dive into this and vet this out correctly.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember O'Neill.
Yes, I just wanted to make the comment that there's been a lot of talk about legitimate businesses, and I'm not here to, really look at that. But I mean, one of the thoughts that if we're looking at what we might look at, might be if there's going to be different categories. I mean, I think there have been some issues with some of these businesses. And we might want to look at what are their hours of the operation and the differences between businesses that have like massage therapists that are either certified or licensed by the state versus other types. So I think that when this came up from, I think, the city attorney's office at that time, and I think the police department had brought up that there had been some issues and some things of concern. So it was accentuated by the impending Super Bowl, but I believe, as I recall, the discussion at the time, there were some other concerns. So maybe, I don't know if it's possible, instead of putting just like a foot, those kinds of limitations, to look at if there's other things to look at in terms of how the business is operated.
I'm assuming that we would only permit legitimate, permitted, licensed facilities. So I would be loath to put a category of illegitimate business.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, I'm just saying, that's what I'm not saying what's legitimate or what isn't.
Right.
But I mean, if there's some concerns, if there's different categories of, say, people who have licensed therapists versus people who don't.
I wasn't here when these regulations were put in place. I'm assuming that we only want licensed facilities. And I think I've heard a lot both from the council and from the public that there's nothing really wrong if this is a licensed facility. Maybe there's no separation requirement. I mean, some cities allow massage as home therapy, as a home occupation, so it's right in the middle of a residential. So it's I think these are things we all need to look at as we bring this back, whether it makes sense to have any separation requirement if we're assuming they're all legitimate, and do we look at the licensing requirement, the permits that the police department issues? Do we look at, that the police department has some oversight over? If someone is doing something illegitimate, then we revoke their business permit to operate, and then you've solved the problem.
Yes.
So but I've got to become more familiar with what the overall scheme was and figure out what the best recommendations, along with the department. I mean, I've got to work with the police department and with the planning department as to what's the appropriate level of regulation to bring back here within the 2-year period.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. I serve on the Human Trafficking Commission down in San Jose along with the chief. And I believe it was at our last meeting, somebody did talk about how there is a program where people can call into to report in any nefarious activities taking place. And it's a central number that they could call into. And I believe the chief specifically asked for the information so that he could incorporate it into our police department. In case, somebody sees something that they can say something. So there is the ability out there to be able to report any incidents of, and if there's any illegal activity going on in the city. And I'm hope maybe some way there's a way that the chief can incorporate that into what we're looking at doing over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
I just wanted to, Chief, did you want to clarify some of this? Because this did start with the Super Bowl. And could you kind of let everybody know how this all came about? Because we kind of, it did happen under another previous city manager. So could you just let people know that was the intent of what happened at the time and how we can go forward with this, not to keep scaring people, to kind of deal with this?
Sure. Good evening.
Thank you.
It is my understanding, a number of years ago, the state took the massage parlor business away from the local government. And what they saw over the next few years is an increase of illegitimate businesses, along with a lot of human trafficking focus. So then the state, a couple of years ago, brought it back down to the local government to be able to manage and permit the businesses because of all the illegitimate businesses, in addition to Super Bowl here locally. So my understanding, council agreed to create this ordinance and give a 2-year leeway for businesses to relocate if necessary if they didn't fit within that ordinance. But I was not involved in the distance or anything like that, and that's the reason why I would like to work with the city attorney's office and others to be able to create a fair ordinance for legitimate businesses in our city.
Okay, and so do you think the 2 years is fair to get this done?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. I know when this happened and the ordinance was passed, I don't think we did a really good job in Santa Clara of communicating it to those small businesses that were having massage therapy. And I know there was a lot of confusion and a lot of miscommunication. And I remember seeing at City Hall just groups coming in because people were fined immediately, and there was a lot of trauma involved with that particular ordinance because of the way we communicated it here at City Hall. So I'm hoping that if this ordinance passes, there's a good way for us to communicate the 2-year extension on this now. I'm glad that the extra year was added because many of the massage therapists have to negotiate leases with their landlords, and this gives them a little more time to negotiate the leases because they don't want to be out of compliance with what's going on with our ordinances in the city. So I think the sooner that we can deal with this, the better. We don't have to wait the whole 2-year period. Let's try to get it done as soon as we can so that these small business massage therapists, which are, very legitimate in nature, have an opportunity to have a long-term business plan with their existing business here in the city of Santa Clara. And they're not able to do that while they're under this cloud of the 2-year, it'll be 2-year now, of this 2-year extension. So I'm sure they want to plan more than 2 years ahead of time for their lives, and the sooner we can do it, the better. So everything's urgent in this city, I've determined. Let's put this under another sense of urgency that we can get this done as soon as practical.
As long as you let Brian's.
So, and with the understanding that we do want to support our massage therapists and our legitimate small businesses here in the city. So there's a motion and a second. City Clerk, do you have everything you need for that motion? All right, for the 2-year extension. And that passes unanimously. So thank you all for your testimony and staying late. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next item we have is down to reports of members and special committees. Councilmember Mahan, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to report that last Thursday, I went to the reception for Esther Fernandez, our new chief curator of the Triton Museum, and it was a pleasure to meet her. Our librarian Hillary was there, and a lot of other people from our city was there to meet Esther, and she's going to be a great addition to the Triton Museum, and we certainly welcome her. I also wanted to announce, of course, that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it's hard not to be aware. Thank you, Debbie, for wearing your pink. major sports team, and Debbie also, don pink shirts and socks and gloves and hats, and TV personalities speak to us in public service messages, and you see pink ribbons everywhere. As a two-time breast cancer survivor, I use every opportunity to speak up for breast cancer awareness, not in some bid for sympathy, not in some slick way to gain some advantage. I speak to raise awareness of survivorship. As only one of the 3.5 million breast cancer survivors in America today, I know that we all live with daily pain. We live with years of treatment. For me, I will have been in yet 10 years of treatment before I'm done. And we live with the knowledge that, most likely, someday this cancer will take our lives. I speak to advocate for early detection and early treatment. There is no cure for cancer, but there is hope. Each year, every month, even day to day, there are new discoveries, new treatments, new knowledge, and that comes available every day to fight this dread disease. This year, there will be an estimated 250,000 women who will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and they, like us, will become survivors. We survive because there is early detection and effective treatment that saves our lives. We survivors and those who care for us live in hope, hope for a cure. But until there is a cure, we fight, we donate, we advocate, we do all we can to find that cure. So I urge every woman who's over the age of 40, or every woman or man who has a history of breast cancer in their families, or anyone who has begun having mammograms but hasn't had one in the last 2 years, to get a mammogram or an ultrasound or genetic testing. These simple diagnostic tests saved my life not once, but twice, and testing can save your life too, or the life of someone you love. So be aware in October that it is the month to get your mammogram. And if you go to Kaiser, I understand that you'll receive a free tote bag this month. And you don't need an appointment. You can just drop in, not only to Kaiser, but to many other healthcare providers. You can just drop in and get a mammogram, and it's worth the time to save your life.
Thank you for that. Do you have to be a member of Kaiser to get the free mammogram?
That's a good question, and I don't know the
Could we
answer.
find out so we
Yeah.
can let people know? Thank you.
I think you
'Cause
might,
that's
but
phenomenal.
other places you don't.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a week and a half ago, Councilmember Colstad and I were able to participate in the annual NCPA annual conference, which is the Northern California Power Agency, and interestingly enough, it was at Silverado, which if we'd been there a week later, we would have been evacuating in the middle of the night. Which kind of the whole, even though we haven't, there has not, we're not saying that there was a very direct tie between the fires that we're now experiencing and some of the topics at the conference, but a lot of the topics at the conference have to do with the kind of the changing environment for electric utilities. And obviously, even though some of our leaders in Washington don't seem to agree, there's a lot of feeling in the utility operators around this country and the world that there is a climate change impact that we're feeling, and we're moving to renewable energy sources, which Santa Clara has always been a leader in, and it's part of the reason why we started NCPA almost 50 years ago. So we had really a lot of tremendous leaders from around the state talking about a lot of the legislative and regulatory changes that they've been working on, and some of the big ones have been postponed to the next legislative session, but they are, I'm sure we're going to be still struggling with them, and some of those, not to get too wonky, but the regionalization of our independent systems operators, which is our extended grid, and whether we should, how we should be working with the states around us, and at what level are we going to set our goals, and for what time frame for converting to renewable energy resources. And so in most of I've said it before, in the last couple of years, just going to these meetings, even when we go to the national meetings, and the people who are from states that are much more reliant on coal, everybody's talking about we're getting off of coal, and coal is no longer the most cost-efficient energy source. So it's kind of unfortunate that there's people at the top of our federal government who don't understand that this is somewhat a market economy, and we're not going to have people going back to burning coal just because they are reducing the environmental regulations on that. So it was very, the conference was very interesting, and one of the very touching presentations that was made by the president this year of the American Public Power Association, and he's the general manager of the electric utility for the Navajo Nation that covers several states in our Southwest. And, you know, in a way we should be proud, but in a way we should be embarrassed that there's still hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are living without even any electric power, and that the mission of this public power entity is to change the lives of the members of the Navajo Nation by making sure that all of them have the things that we take for granted. If you don't have any electricity, you're not pumping water, you don't have any running water, you don't have internet, you don't have any refrigeration. That was something, it was a great reminder to see and listen to his presentation about the change that having reliable electricity and all the other utilities, including internet and telephone service and all that, that it enables, what a change that has made in all of our lives. So that was one of the things that really touched me. And, you know, once again, to be grateful for the city that we live in and what we can do, and to look forward to improving our utility and how it operates and how clean it operates, and the services that we can provide to the community.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a follow-up from the concert last week, from the Coldplay concert. It was misreported that there were only 6 complaints received, and that was the farthest thing from the truth, based on the emails that the city council received, and not even counting emails or discussions that were going on in the north side for several days. There were a lot of complaints, and so I know next Tuesday we will be having a Stadium Authority meeting, and as part of that meeting, I know a memorandum is being prepared to discuss the curfew and get an update on the curfew going forward, and also follow up on the noise monitoring system that was put in place, and see what we can do about having that information made available on the city's website, so that not just us, but the community can be aware of the noise in the community. So I look forward to that discussion next Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Colstead?
Thanks, Mayor. Last week, myself and Mr. Rockema, our utility director from Silicon Valley Power, and 2 other staff members from SVP traveled up to Oregon and Washington with several of our business partners from the city of Redding and the Modesto Irrigation District, and we toured the Bighorn 1 and Bighorn 2 wind generation facility. The operator of the facility is a company named Avant Grid, and they gave us a real good lecture on the status of the project and the amount of power that it is generating to us that we wheel down to Santa Clara on the COTP, the California Oregon Transmission Project. As Councilmember O'Neill mentioned, it's part of our effort to switch from carbon power to clean, carbon-free power. And hopefully by the end of the year, we will have another good announcement to share with you all about our power mix and how it's changing drastically to renewables. So it was a good trip. It was real quick, but we got to see the project, and it's doing very well for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Colstead. I have 2 items. One's fairly quick. It's the In the middle of September, Councilmember Davis and I attended the League of California Cities Annual Conference and Expo in Sacramento, and I didn't have an opportunity to talk about this last meeting, but we did attend the conference, as well as our city attorney, another member of our city attorney's office, our public works director was there, our fire chief was there, and Groff was there? Yeah, of course he was there. I went to a session, our IT guru. And we listened to keynote speakers. They had, I know Councilmember Davis talked a little bit about this last time, America's first African-American female combat pilot. Her name was Vernice. Her nickname is Fly Girl Amore. Anyway, she had a very, very inspirational speech about what she had to go through to achieve the type of success that she achieved, and she was just so inspiring. I'd love for her to come to Santa Clara at some point when we think we have it bad, and what she went through to get where she was. It was just amazing. It was very inspirational to all the attendees at that opening ceremony. We also listened to the founders of the Citizen University, Eric Liu. Very interesting. We attended a series of educational workshops, networking sessions, and meetings. One, how cities can embrace innovation, which our own Gaurav was one of the speakers, and he's very well respected in the league and in the cities around, and look to him, since he's in the center of Silicon Valley, what his innovation and where his thoughts are. He was very well sought out. Avoiding code enforcement and safety disasters. We learned about that. Strategies to address the pension costs, which I know our city manager is going to help us with, since we have a few of those. The passage of Prop 64 and grant information, and using partnerships to address hunger, homelessness, and support positive youth outcomes. So it was a very educational and interesting league conference this year. So I just wanted to report on that. And then the second thing I wanted to report on was the fact that I think I have some slides. I don't know if anyone there can put them up, but this last Saturday we had the, thank you, they mysteriously appear.
They're back
Thank
there
you.
too.
The Comic-Con at our library, which was probably so amazing. I couldn't even, it's hard for me to even describe the atmosphere at that, at the Comic-Con. Is there the first? I wish I had a.
You got that picture of Hillary, right? Put that
Thank
picture
you.
of Hillary up there.
Well, first of all, when I walked in, I saw this.
Mugshots.
And what it was, I think they're having a lot of fun with us, but this is in the library, and we each had our superhero names attached to our photos. And so we had Councilmember Davis, you were Hawkeye.
Yes.
I had to look up a few of these. Councilmember Mahan was Iron Man. Vice Mayor Caserta was Hulk. Councilmember Watanabe was Falcon. Councilmember O'Neill was Thor. And get this, Councilmember Kolstad was Captain America.
Oh.
I want to know who you know over there. So I did look up that one.
Hillary.
He has agility, strength, speed, endurance, and reaction time superior to an Olympic athlete.
Oh, hell no.
So, and then I was Nick Fury, which I don't even never heard of this, but apparently Nick takes an infinity formula that halts the aging system and allows him to be active despite being over a century old. So, thank you, library staff. All right. So, so that if we can go to the next slide. So then we have our own city librarian, Hillary Keith, as Khaleesi, am I saying that right? From Game of Thrones with two stormtroopers. You can't really see the whole outfit, but I would have sworn it was Khaleesi. So she really got into, she's right here in the audience, and she really got into the mood of what was happening at the library. If we can go to the next slides. We have Chewbacca and from Star Wars and the Minions. There were so many people that were in costume of different superheroes and sci-fi heroes and everyone else. Here we have the children's story time with Thor. I did see Thor. I wished I could have gone to story time. It was just amazing. So I want to thank Hillary, and Hillary, would you like to say something about Comic-Con? I think there were over 5,000 attendees there. I brought my 14-year-old who wasn't really excited about going, and I left, and he said, I'd like to stay. 4 hours later, I picked him and his friend up because it was so amazing, and he had so much fun. So
Good
why don't
job,
you tell
Hill.
us about what happened there? You'll be able to say it
Thank
better
you,
than
Madam
me.
Mayor. It was a lot of fun, but not 5,000, 7,500 people.
Oh, those were the
It was a
early
big day.
numbers.
But it was really exciting to see all ages, all families, children, teens, millennials, everyone in the library having a really great time. But really, I really wanted to thank our creative and energetic staff. And I had nothing to do, I didn't even know about those little signs. They were being funny. But also I want to thank all our city departments for their support. We had Public Works, we had the police presence, fire marshal, the Water Express, Tap Water Express. So we really had a lot of support from throughout the city, and that was a lot of fun. But it was really, I'm not a Comic-Con person, I don't really know, but it's a really big thing. This is our second one, and the interest and the energy is still just as high. And it's really cool to kind of tap into that interest and that fun and excitement. So no, it was great, and there was not an incident, except for parking was bad, of course. But other than that, everyone had a great time. We had lots of vendors who were very complimentary and want to come back and do it again, that want to give us things. Marvel Comics gave us boxes of comic books that we gave away for free. We had local artists on Artist Boulevard that were there with their wares and showing us their work. And it was really fantastic. It was a really good vibe. STEM Central is just as good, but it's kind of a different focus. So this was a lot of fun.
So, Hillary, who was the famous illustrator that was there?
Ron Lim
Yeah.
from Marvel Comics, and we had several illustrators for children's books, but they're mostly graphic novels, which was really an interesting way, sort of the gateway book to get people into literature and reading on their own. So if you're really visual, graphic novels and comic books are a good way to start getting kids reading.
Well, you had the children be able to decorate their own tote bags, and you gave away the free comics, and there were so many volunteers there, so many volunteers, and it was really nice how you opened it up to the park as well in the back. It was a beautiful setting.
And also the new demo garden was
Right.
well used. So it was really an example of placemaking. I thought that it worked really well, that it spread out in the park and in the front, so.
Well, thank you for the wonderful job, and please thank your staff too
Yeah, they're
for putting that
fantastic.
together. What an incredible effort that was. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we missed each other, but I was out there as well and spent some time and just as Hillary gave me a tour all over the library. I mean, there was not one space in the library that wasn't utilized. Oh, and city manager was there with her husband as well. I missed you also, but I heard you were out there. And, it really was wonderful. So thank you to you and all your staff and all the volunteers. I mean, it was a great way for the kids to get community service hours. They were diligently working out there, and all the city staff, everybody just really put in the time to make this a successful event. But the one thing I really, really wanted to share was that the children's story time with Thor was really called
Story time? Oh,
exactly.
sorry.
Thory
Thory
time.
time. Yes, it was Thory time. It was very well done, very creative.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hillary. All right, any other comments from the council? Seeing none, city manager, executive director report.
I have 3 items that I just want to speak to quickly. I too was at Comic-Con, first of all, and the library is gorgeous. I just have to share that I was amazed, and my husband was as well. I want to acknowledge that we have 2 fire crews and 2 engines that have responded to the North Bay fires, and this is really developing to be a public service mutual aid response. I've been sharing with the City Council the level of inquiries that have been coming in from multiple California organizations, and we do anticipate that additional staff may be sent, and so I'll keep you posted as well as the public with respect to the large-scale fires. October 12th at 6 o'clock at the Central Park Library, we will be having a website redesign community meeting to receive input. This is a very important milestone so that as we think through designing the website, we review it in a manner or design it with filters that a community or a resident member seeks city service and seeks information rather than how we internally are organized. I think this is a really important process. And just some points of clarification on some comments that Councilmember Watanabe made. The issues around the curfew, in terms of a status update, we would be prepared to provide a status update, but it's been pretty clearly articulated by the management company in terms of their position to cease weekday events that are that may violate the 10 p.m. limit. That's the extent in terms of what we would respond to, and that would be included in the packet for any other further discussion on the part of the council, as well as I would just include a map of the noise monitoring locations with requests that I be directed back to provide more information. I'm just not able to produce that turnaround this quickly, but happy to provide that if that's the council's desire or the board's desire. That's it.
Thank you. I have one question about the redesign of the website. Are we going to communicate that out to the public about this October 12th meeting?
We have
So they
already
know?
pushed it out on social media and various other sources.
Okay,
But
great.
just wanted to make mention of it here in case there's a large viewing audience.
Oh, there is.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. Report of action taken in closed session. City Attorney?
There was no reportable action in closed session.
Okay, thank you, which leads us to our adjournment, and I have a couple of people here and situations. One is if we could please adjourn this meeting in memory of the following individuals: James Robert Booth, retired Santa Clara PD Reserve Officer. James was an active member of the Santa Clara community and a valued corporate executive. He volunteered as a reserve police officer with the Santa Clara Police Department for 18 years. He loved traveling the world with his wife, Pamela, and children, Brian, Ryder, Kevin, and Paige. His favorite pastimes included riding his Harley Davidson, cheering on the Warriors with his best friend Bob, and surrounding himself with those he loved. As a beloved husband, father, brother, uncle, grandfather, and friend, James was a true inspiration to everyone that crossed his path. Also, if we could please adjourn this meeting in memory of John Elmer Crow, the father-in-law to Assistant City Clerk Jose Jasso. John was an all-state champion and received a basketball scholarship to Bradley University in Peoria. John was called to serve his country with the armed forces and was based in Yokohama, Japan. His military assignment was to play basketball to entertain the troops. While home on leave in 1952, he married Mary Frances Watson. They had 3 children, Margie, John, and Douglas. He graduated from the University of Utah in 1959 with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. John enjoyed playing tennis and building model trains. He and his wife traveled extensively and spent several months each year at their vacation home in Indian Wells. John is remembered as a humorous, caring, and wise individual to those that were fortunate enough to have known him. Also ask that we adjourn in the honor of the victims of the fires in Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Yuba, and Orange counties. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims, the missing, the injured, and everyone who continues to be affected by the fires in Sonoma, Napa, Mendocino, Yuba, and Orange counties. Our thoughts and prayers are also with the brave firefighters, including our very own City of Santa Clara Fire Department personnel who have joined the battle against the deadly wildfires. Also, the victims of the shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. We offer our heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of the individuals who lost their lives during the shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada on October 1st, 2017. Our hearts are with the victims, the injured, and the loved ones, and to all the first responders. Let us please have a moment of silence in memory of the victims who lost their lives during these recent tragedies. Do I have a motion for all those adjournments?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion second. Lights on the motion. That passes unanimously, and the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
You have to unhook your thing, baby. Sorry.